CJ Stroud or Trevor Lawrence. Both of them dueled this past weekend.
Strong. This is one of the hotter topics we're going to have.
Both of them had outstanding games. I don't know who you guys favor and who had a better game. Maybe you can give that take first and then take who you go for. Who would you take going forward? CJ or Trevor Lawrence, who are you taking going forward if you were to start a team today?
Who was more impressive? Believe it or not, the answer is still CJ Stroud.
I thought they were both equally just as impressive.
I say a little bit more impressive because, again, you come into this game, Jacksonville already losing to the Texans. But still, on paper, in theory, from what you guys tell me, this Jaguars defense is better than the Texans. That's not a question. So for Stroud to still go into this game, throw for over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, not turn the ball over. I mean, this is essentially what he's been doing for weeks at this point. But I'm sorry, Riv. It seems like you want to talk, so go ahead.
No, because I think, like...
Can't get a fucking word off of this guy.
It's okay.
I'm sorry. I do
I'm
apologize.
fucking with
It's
you.
just, it's twin. I get a
That's
little...
why I'll shut up.
Bro can't help himself. He's got to get it out.
I waited for you to talk. You didn't talk, so I was like, all right, time for me to
No, because I
answer.
think this game, honestly, was definitely winnable in the Texans' favor. I thought a lot of the play calling they did towards the end, their 4th down, 3rd down conversion, like some of the plays were questionable, like D'Amico and CJ. Like, they ran, there was this one drive, they had 3rd and 1, and they went 2 big plays back to back. And it was like, why not just rely on your run game? You know, why not just run the ball, get first down? You got 1 yard. I don't know. I think sometimes the Texans rely too much on the big play. And I think that's in credit because they, are kind of like, we have CJ Stroud. He's a big play machine. We're just going to rely on this guy. There was a couple ones where he overthrew. But I think both of them equally played great. I think Trevor Lawrence was great. I think Calvin Ridley was great. He got it going after that drop. He started to figure things out. He started to get in the groove. Kirk was as good as he's been all year. I think, ETN was great also. And then on the Texans side, Tank is going to be Tank. Tank's been that. For me, who I would rather have, for me personally, I would go CJ Stroud. I think, once again, and I said this before, Trevor Lawrence was a generational prospect coming out of college. But I think when you get him into the NFL, you kind of have to tamper your expectations. You kind of have to tamper what you think of it. He might not be that generational player as a quarterback, but that's fine. He's still, in my eyes, top 8, top 7 quarterback in the NFL. I think CJ Stroud, though, aside from, because I think sometimes he doesn't run the ball when he should. He likes to sit back there, kind of play freelance, and nobody sacks him, to give him credit. Like, he does get back there. It's hard to sack him, but sometimes he has opportunities where he runs, and I think that's where Trevor is better at, where Trevor sees a lane, nobody's open, he makes the run, and CJ is kind of like, I'll just rely on my receivers, wait for them to get open, rely on my arm. But I think in terms of
presence.
Yeah, I think in terms of, pocket presence, his reads, his progression is amazing. CJ is one-on-one in terms of, like, he's so quick with it, his big arm play. I think Trevor, the difference between them two is, Trevor plays a little bit too safe in terms of his game plan. I think Trevor's a little bit too safe in the form of CJ makes more big plays. He takes more shots than the field, just from what I've seen. And I like CJ's arm more. I like his progression. So I would probably lean him. I think it's going to be close going down the stretch. I think both of them are extremely young in the same division. We also can't forget about AR next year when he comes in. That's going to be a tight race between them three.
It's going to be a fun division.
Yeah, but I like CJ's talent more. I like his arm more. And I like the fact that his pocket presence already at this point is up there with some of the best in the league.
I've loved what the Jags offense, how they've looked these last couple of weeks. To start off the year, they were winning games, but it didn't feel like I had them in my top 10 in the power rankings, but I never felt very confident about them being a great team. But they've been a lot more aggressive. I mentioned last week how Trevor Lawrence's ADOT was the 3rd or 4th highest of his career under Doug Peterson, and this past week it was about the same. It was 9.7 ADOT last week, 9.3 this week. CJ Stroud was right up there too. Both these quarterbacks are great, and I'm happy they're both in the same division with AR, because this division, it feels like, has been bad for so many years. Jacksonville it was basically a laughingstock for a while before Trevor Lawrence got there. The Texans, when they had a couple years in between Deshaun Watson, and now they got CJ Stroud. The Colts have been in quarterback limbo what feels like forever since Andrew Luck and AR in his limited time look great. So happy the division, is all getting back to some of the top quarterbacks that we've seen in the NFL this season. Both quarterbacks win in different ways, I feel like. I do think I think Stroud is a better processor. I think he has better touch on the ball, but I do think Trevor Lawrence has more zip and velocity when he's trying to make, when he needs to make a throw in a tight window. CJ Stroud can do it, but I do feel like I see Trevor Lawrence do it with more consistency, specifically when it comes to arm strength. It's so hard picking between both of these guys because what we've seen so far with CJ Stroud, and remember that Trevor Lawrence coming out of college was generational, and he had the biggest flop of a rookie year, given that was Urban Meyer more than anybody else. And CJ Stroud, with even the question marks he had coming into this year, even though he played great in his final game against Georgia, and kind of those question marks got thrown out the window, nobody was expecting him to be this good, this fast.
No way.
He's putting up historical numbers. It's going to go down as probably the best rookie season we have ever seen from a quarterback. And that's why I slightly lean CJ Stroud, because he's so good so early. And this Texans team still has years of rebuilding, realistically. I think coming into the season, we would have all agreed that the Texans were probably still multiple years away from being a legitimate playoff team. But what they've been able to do between Bobby Slowick, D'Amico Ryans, even though the defense still needs some work, Will Anderson has looked phenomenal so far in his rookie season. I love what I see from CJ Stroud. That's nothing to take away from Trevor Lawrence because he's been great in his own right. But I really value how great CJ Stroud has been so early on, and the way he's elevating everybody offensively, from rookies to, third, fourth year guys with Nico Collins, and you get a competent back there in Devin Singletary who looked good for a couple of games there too. Offensive line injuries in and out, shuffling the offensive line, it doesn't matter. The production is still there. And the fact that they even have a chance to make the wild card, let alone the division, it feels like a bit of a long shot now, 2 games back. You have a division loss now against Jacksonville. I'm slightly leaning CJ Stroud, but this feels like a conversation we're going to have year after year since both these teams in the same division.
So let's go by the numbers. Completion percentage, Trevor Lawrence. Passing yards, touchdowns, CJ Stroud. Now, to me, if we're going by the numbers, if I'm a stat merchant, it's CJ Stroud. We shouldn't have this conversation if we're going by stats, especially if you want to compare rookie seasons.
It's not close.
It's not even a conversation. But again, you see how Trevor Lawrence ended the year last year, did have a playoff win on top of it, coming back from 27 points down, showed resiliency, second year in his career. And this year, where you could feel that the Jacksonville offense has been underwhelming, specifically their pass offense, last 2 weeks going up against the Titans, going up against the Houston Texans, it was to be expected. He was going to have himself a ball game. Now, it's pretty funny that this isn't a prolific passing offense without a Zay Jones. Zay Jones, who you can respect, is a how you described Olamide Zaccheaus, you can describe as Zay Jones, really high-level role player. He's a role player. That's his role with the Jacksonville offense, and it allows the field to open up for Calvin Ridley, allows the field to, consistently, you're going to see Christian Kirk win regardless, but you saw him have another really good game against the Houston Texans. The stats here are misleading. Now, you want to talk about drops. CJ's had his fair share of drops himself, too. Has more drops for his team than Trevor Lawrence. But Trevor Lawrence's drops are a little bit heavier to me because they're touchdowns. Calvin Ridley had a drop touchdown this past week against the Texans. Calvin Ridley has 2 touchdowns. Has 2 touchdowns earlier this season where he gets one foot in, just can't get the other one in. So if we're going by stats, again, it's CJ pretty comfortably. But when you watch every single week and you understand Trevor Lawrence is hitting in tight windows, where I'm going to have to disagree with you, brother. I don't think that he's a safe quarterback. I think you could say he's safe when it comes to pocket presence, which is why I'll lean CJ Stroud in that regard, because CJ's calm as a cucumber in that. I asked you, who do you think is his best comp for pocket presence? Because it's not a Mahomes. It's not a Josh Allen. You gave me the perfect answer. It's a Joe Burrow. I think that's so perfect, where Joe Burrow will sit in that pocket. He'll let the play develop. He feels like he doesn't have it. He'll get outside. CJ does the exact same thing, but is still looking to push the ball downfield. To have that type of trait puts you in a special conversation. With Trevor, it's more so he doesn't love what's happening in the pocket because his offensive line hasn't been that great.
It's been bad.
For sure, but he gets outside the pocket maybe sometimes a little bit too soon, but has that athletic ability to extend the plays as well, where he has a little bit more rushing aspect to his game. Not saying that CJ doesn't, just saying the facts. Trevor does have that in his back pocket too. It's a tough one. I'll lean Trevor, but it is very, very close. To do this in year one, what CJ's doing, we may never see again. I feel like we say that pretty often. Mahomes for his first year starting in the league, 50 touchdowns. We'll never see that. I feel pretty confident in saying that. But to have the best rookie season that we've seen, to be in a conversation with a Trevor Lawrence, who is at the upper echelon of quarterbacks, it is extremely impressive in its own right. I slightly lean Trev for the arm talent, but that doesn't mean that C.J. Stroud doesn't have it either. I just would lean Trevor Lawrence at this current moment in time.
I would have never imagined that I would get up in the morning and look forward to a Jaguars and Texans matchup.
Insane how 2023 gives us that.
These Thursday night games are going to hit like crack in the future because they've been
fact.
ass every
That's a
time
fact.
it's Jags-Texans.
And an AFC South, I grew up on an AFC South that the Colts had Peyton Manning. They also had Andrew Luck. The Texans had Matt Schaub. They could never really get the quarterback right when J.J. Watt was in his prime years. The Titans always had a bridge quarterback, and the Jaguars never had a quarterback. So looking,
Titans did have McNair for some time.
yes,
RIP
that's like
legend.
early 2000s,
Yeah, for sure.
But talking about like the 2010s era, never really had a quarterback that was a staple for
Right.
that team for a long time. Ryan Tannehill was their best one in a long time.
For sure.
And even him, I look at as a system quarterback. So for this division now to have two superior talents, and I think Anthony Richardson is also that.
Yep.
And when he gets healthy, I think he'll make a big impact on the Colts. It's surprising to me. Now, the Jaguars' offensive line has been bad, but the way they've been playing these last 2 weeks
Agreed.
has really allowed them to take off. This past weekend, Trevor Lawrence was pressure on 18% of his dropbacks. Zay Jones being in the lineup, it now gives free will for Calvin Ridley to move along the line of scrimmage because Christian Kirk, as great of a slot guy as he is, he cannot play on the outside and win on the outside. Defenses will not respect him out there. So oftentimes Ridley is solely the X guy who cannot move, and they use him to stretch the field, and he's basically used as a decoy. But with Zay Jones in the lineup, they can now open up the field. Zay Jones can be that deep threat, and Ridley can be that guy that moves along and wins with his route running. And I think that's what's really expanded this offense to the point that we've seen Ridley past couple of weeks. He's having some great games since Zay Jones has been back. Trevor Lawrence doesn't have quite the touchdown numbers yet. He had one touchdown versus the Texans, but the yardage is there.
Had a rushing too.
He did. There's just something about C.J. Stroud that's a little bit different. When the Texans were down in that game, I never felt once that they were going to lose that game. I never felt like they were out of it. C.J. consistently made plays towards the end of the football game. And the reason why they didn't go into overtime was because Matt Amendola he missed a kick. C.J. put them in position to get a field goal and to potentially go into overtime. And if they went into overtime, 100%, I think the Texans win that game. I think they had the momentum. I think they had the flow going. But it's that kick from Amendola, who had missed one earlier as well. And I know about Matt Amendola. He used to be a Jet, and he used to miss a shit ton of kicks. So I
He
know
can't
about
kick
him.
anything past 50.
As soon as he was going out to kick that football, he looked scared. He looked timid. I knew he was going to miss.
Don't do that. He almost made it.
No.
He almost made it.
It was
Nah,
dead
they
down the
almost
middle.
make that
It
shit,
needed
though.
like another 2
58
yards.
Like, come on.
Not everybody Jake
He shot
Elliott,
it
man.
right down the middle.
I had a feeling he was going to miss it, though. I did have a feeling. It was closer than I expected. I thought it was going to go wide right.
That
But
shit was close
It was,
as fuck.
it was closer than I
I
expected.
was heartbroken, actually.
Me too.
I was sad.
The Texans had a big time play taken off. The big time play to Tank Dell when Tank Dell was in motion.
my God,
that
and
shit
they called it illegal
blew
motion.
my-
And they had
I-
another one on the left sideline that he just barely misses.
I didn't think that was an illegal motion. I see the Dolphins run that play every single week. Maybe I'm missing something. I think C.J. Stroud was more impressive in this game, and that's not to take anything away from Trevor Lawrence because I think Trevor Lawrence made throws in this game, made
goodness.
a couple, made more than 3 that there are only a few players in this world that can make. But C.J., how comfortable he is in year one, and I'm not somebody that's going to compare the rookie years because I think the situation Trevor was in
Agreed.
is a bit unfair. I just do think that with the Jaguars' offensive line not being good, early in Lawrence's career last year and in his rookie year, his pocket presence really stood out. He didn't take sacks and he didn't make mistakes within the pocket. He knew how to navigate that. But I think at this point in his career, because of that bad offensive line, it's kind of forced him to build up some bad habits where he's getting the ball out a little bit too quick, where he's not allowing things to progress because he doesn't trust the offensive line. Where C.J. Stroud, because he's the rookie, he's still not experiencing those things, so he's not in that position. But there's just something about C.J. Stroud. I think Lawrence has him beat in the categories of talent, but CJ looks more of an athlete to me. He looks faster. He looks like he processes defenses a bit better. And I feel like when the moment is at its highest and when you need a play, he's somebody that I trust more than a lot of guys in the league. And
That's hard to argue against.
him so early on, for me to have that faith in him that I know that if it's the final drive, I got 100% trust that I think he's going to make a play. He's going to get something. With these group of receivers that Nico Collins broke out with CJ. Tank Dell was a rookie playing great with CJ.
He's about to break their franchise rookie record.
He is. Dalton Schultz has always been a solid tight end. But
another good year.
The fact
Noah
that
Brown
CJ
having a career year too.
The fact that CJ Stroud is succeeding and with this supporting cast, I understand that it's better than we think. I think that people don't give the supporting cast enough credit.
Nico is that. Nico is very good.
And the coaching also is better than we think. I think Bobby Slovic has proven to be one of the better play callers. I'm just very thoroughly impressed with what CJ Stroud is doing. And not an exact comparison, but what I kind of would compare it to is kind of like Dak Prescott versus a Carson Wentz, where, I always kind of favor Dak a little bit. And it's not a knock on Wentz because Wentz used to be a really great quarterback, and I don't think Lawrence will have the same trajectory. But right now, at their peaks, I kind of favor CJ just a little bit more.